redistricting or gerrymandering, as some people know it. You've said you don't like talking about it, but all options are on the table when it comes to your state. There's only one seat here that is actually Republican, and it's a seat held by Representative Andy Harris. Are you considering trying to redraw lines in Maryland?
Yeah, when I say all options are on the table, all options are on the table.
All right, folks, so we have some good breaking news there. That's Democratic Governor Wes Moore taking a page out of California Democratic Governor Gavin Newsom's playbook and bringing the fight to Donald Trump and the Republicans in the gerrymandering war that the Republicans started. And this comes after Wes Moore triggered Donald Trump. Trump went off on Wes Moore earlier this morning on Truth Social, and we have to get into that too, because if Wes Moore does what he says he may do, he would rob Trump of not just a Republican congressperson, but Andy Harris is the chairman of the far-right Freedom Caucus, which is a major pillar of support for the Trump administration. But before we unpack all of that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, we'll go to Donald Trump's attack on Wes Moore, and then we'll play the rest of that clip and a couple of others, okay? So this is Donald Trump this morning, just popping off on Governor Moore, losing his shit. He goes, Governor Wes Moore of Maryland has asked, in a rather nasty and provocative tone, that I walk the streets of Maryland with him. I assume he's talking about out-of-control, crime-ridden Baltimore. As president, I would much prefer that he clean up his crime disaster before I go there for a walk. Wes Moore's record on crime is a very bad one, unless he fudges his figures on crime like many of the other blue states are doing. But if Wes Moore needs help, like Gavin Newsom did in L.A., I will send in the troops, which is being done in nearby D.C., and quickly clean up the crime. After only 1 week, there was no crime and no murder in D.C. When it's like that in Baltimore, I will proudly walk the street with the failing because of crime governor of Maryland. P.S. Baltimore is ranked the 4th worst city in the nation in crime and murder. So stop talking and get to work, Wes. I'll see you on the streets. Also, I gave Wes Moore a lot of money to fix his demolished bridge. I will now have to rethink that decision. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Make America great again, Donald Trump. So a couple of things to note. Crime in Baltimore is plummeting. That is true. Just objectively plummeting. Number one. Number two, the money that Donald Trump gave Wes Moore was congressionally appropriated. He merely signed the bill. Number three, Trump is indicating that he's going to punish Maryland and other blue states for defying him or questioning him in a provocative tone, even though that would impact not just Wes Moore, but the citizens, the residents of Maryland, including Republican residents of Maryland, thus, again, just betraying the total mafia mob mindset of Donald Trump, the morally inferior, by far the most morally inferior president we've had, certainly in modern American history. Imagine if President Biden or President Obama or the next Democratic president were to say similar things about red states, how Republicans would rightly react. There you have it, just losing his shit on Wes Moore. So with that in mind, let's go back to the clip I was just showing you, where Wes Moore says all options are on the table. Let's take a look.
Are you actively looking at it now?
Yeah, because I think we have to. Yes, and I think we have to, because I think what's happened is this is what people hate about politics in the first place: the fact that the president of the United States, very similar to what he did in Georgia, where he called up a series of voter registrants and said, "I need you to find me more votes." We're watching the same thing now, where he's calling up legislatures around the country and saying, "I need you to find me more congressional districts."
He's doing it. That may be different, but Democrats redistrict. You know this.
Yeah.
But Gavin Newsom's doing it right now. A few years ago in New York, we saw this. This can backfire. Do you really want to go down this road?
I want to make sure that we have fair lines and fair seats, where we don't have situations where politicians are choosing voters, but that voters actually have a chance to choose their elected officials. We need to be able to have fair maps. And we also need to make sure that if the president of the United States is putting his finger on the scale to try to manipulate elections because he knows that his policies cannot win in a ballot box, then it behooves each and every one of us to be able to keep all options on the table to ensure that the voters' voices can actually be heard and we can have maps.
In that one district where they have a Republican representative, that they are actively being represented in Maryland?
I think if you look at maps across the country, less than 10% of congressional seats are actually competitive by nature. Mm-hmm. Less than 10%. And so if you look at the average win margin in our state and so many states, the average win margin is upwards of 20 to 30%. So that means we already have so many gerrymandered areas that we have to be able to add a measure of fairness in the way that it's applied. Mm-hmm. And so, yes, all options need to be on the table in the state of Maryland.
So listen, I like it. I mean, again, I think he could have been even more direct and been like, listen, I don't support gerrymandering, but I'm not willing to roll over and allow Donald Trump to gerrymander. Like, listen, again, Margaret Brennan's the host there. I understand what you're doing. I understand you got to ask the adversarial question. I respect it. Fair enough. But the thing is, it's a false equivalence. Okay. Republicans picked this gerrymandering fight. They started it. We didn't start it. They started it. We asked them to stop. They refused. They gave us the finger, laughed, and continued anyway. Your question assumes, Margaret, that Democrats are simply obligated to roll over and let Republicans run roughshod over us and change the rules of the game mid-game because they're afraid they will lose the game under the fair rules under which the game began. And we're just not obligated to do that. So do I oppose gerrymandering? Yes, I do. Am I willing to do it here in a retaliatory way against the Republicans? Yes, I am. And that doesn't make me a bad person. That doesn't even put me on the same moral playing field as the Republicans in the first place. It's political self-defense. And I have every right and every obligation for my voters, my constituents, the Democratic majority in Maryland, to stand up and say, hey, listen, if you do this when we beg you not to, we will fight back on your own terms. And that's your fault. That's 100% the Republicans' fault. But Wes Moore's a really good guy, and he's not going to speak quite as adversaries. More on the Andy Beshear side of things in terms of the scale of viciousness of Democratic governors. You have Newsom and Pritzker, who are really big on taking the fight to Trump. Wes Moore's like a super affable guy. I mean, I think he says, when we'll play the clips here in just a second, he says he's not going to run for president, but I could see Wes Moore absolutely running for president, if not in 2028, then in 2032. So I also mentioned that if Wes Moore proceeds down the Gavin Newsom road, he will not only take a seat away from the Republicans, which is just objectively good, but Andy Harris is that Republican in particular, and he's the one who leads the House Freedom Caucus. So, the Lauren Boeberts and the Chip Roys, like all these crazy far-right Republicans, he's their leader. And so not only would you be depriving Trump of an ally, it would be a real symbolic gesture because you'd be, politically neutralizing the leader of that particular caucus. Of course, they would get a new one, but it would be, again, an excellent symbolic gesture. Like, yeah, I'm removing this particular piece off the board. Love it. Here's some other clips. And this one, I believe, is when Governor Moore addresses, it's either this one or the next one, maybe both, where he addresses Trump's attack on him.
We know the president watches the program, and he likely saw the guest listing because he's tweeting about you, or truthing, I guess. He says the governor, Wes Moore of Maryland, has asked in a nasty and provocative tone that I walk the streets of Maryland with him. And he's talking about crime-ridden Baltimore. It's quite lengthy, but he goes after your record on crime. He says it's a bad one. He says if you need help, he will send in the troops, which is being done in nearby D.C. I mean, when we saw a few weeks ago the deployment on the streets of Los Angeles, the governor of California tried to go to the courts, and he was unable to stop it. Is the reality here is you can't stop the president from sending troops to Baltimore if he wants to.
The year before I became the governor, in 2022, Baltimore was averaging almost a homicide a day. And I came in and I said, I refuse to be a governor who just offers thoughts and prayers to this situation. So we said we're actually going to work in partnership with Mayor Scott, work in partnership with local elected officials, work in partnership with local law enforcement. We made the largest investments in local law enforcement in our state's history, over $50 million going to Baltimore City alone.
That came from federal money.
That came from both federal and state money. And also, Maryland became one of the only states that actually helps to fund the U.S. attorney out of balance sheet, taking many of those gun crimes and actually turning them into federal charges. And the results have been incredibly encouraging, where Maryland's had amongst the fastest drops in violent crime of anywhere in the United States in the past 2.5 years. Yeah. The homicide rate in Maryland is down over 20% since I have been the governor. And the last time the homicide rate was this low in Baltimore City, I was not born yet. And so the reason that I've asked the president to come and join us is because he seems to enjoy living in this blissful ignorance, these tropes and these 1980 scare tactics. And, just last week I was in Baltimore. And I was with a group called We Are Us, who's a violence intervention group. And they say, we're all we got, we're all we need. And that's exactly how people in this community feel. Because while the president is spending his time from the Oval Office making jabs and attacks at us, there are people actually on the ground doing the work who know what supports would actually work to continue to bring down crime, but it's falling on deaf ears of the president of the United States.
Love it. And that's what I'm saying. Like, Wes Moore's not the sort of person who's going to swing back viciously. I mean, he's built like a brick shit house. Dude is massive. I think he's like I want to say he's like an ex-football player, and I know he's ex-military. I mean, he's just, but he is a gentle giant, right? He's very much in the Andy Beshear side of temperament. But I love how he does this. Like, it's just a disarming charm to him. And again, he is asked about Donald Trump in particular, and we'll see his answer.
And I have existed in neighborhoods and communities that have been chronically neglected. And I remember one of the first things that happened in our first months in, I had to visit shock trauma inside of Baltimore because Baltimore had one of the largest mass shootings in its history. And I visited a young man, a teenager, who was just finished surgery and had one of his testicles shot off and was talking about how was he ever going to become a father. And I said at that point, I refuse to continue doing this and not putting the proper resources in place and not being able to put a real focus on making our community safer. And that's why it is so frustrating when we're hearing from the President of the United States something that is just purely performative without actually focusing on these communities and these neighborhoods who believe that progress is possible and who are willing to put in the work. And we're just simply asking for Washington to be able to acknowledge it and support it.
He says, you're not presidential timber at all. I imagine you disagree with that assessment?
No, I've been very clear. I'm not running for president, but it's interesting but it's interesting. The president seems to be more concerned about my future than he is about the future of the American people. And that's where I'm asking him to keep his focus on the things that actually matter right now, which is the fact that his economic policies are driving up prices on everything from electronics to the clothes that we wear to the food that we eat. Talk about the fact that he has immigration policies that are knocking out tens of thousands of jobs in the state of Maryland. Talk about the fact that you are about to kick veterans and seniors off of health care. Don't worry about my future. Worry about theirs.
He's so good. He is obviously presidential timber. Again, I don't know if he'll run in 2028 or 2032 or sometime thereafter. He's relatively young. I think he's in his late 40s. Yeah, just Westmore is awesome. He's got, the kids would say he's got Riz. He's got Riz for days. He's the Wizard of Oz. You know, he's got charisma. He's got charm. He's very, very sharp. I could absolutely imagine a presidential ticket with him on it. But what's really good is that even somebody this charming and affable and somebody who's this mild-mannered is saying, actually, yeah, I'm going to look at Gavin Newsom's playbook, and yeah, we're going to seriously look at gerrymandering Maryland in response to what Texas is doing and what Trump is doing, and we're willing to play by at least, if not the same rules, certainly similar rules, and I'd love to see it. In the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.